Some people get into cars for the speed. Some people get into cars for the aesthetics, while others get in for the sense of community. So what drew me to cars? I think what I found that I really enjoyed about working on cars was the problem-solving aspect of it. The idea of taking something that I don't really understand and slowly but surely figuring out and troubleshooting, I think that's the most rewarding thing that I find I can do. So over the course of the next 30 or so minutes, I hope you enjoy watching the last 12 months of progress for this car. From it being run uncarbureted, barely running, a bunch of engine problems, suspension problems, to a fully built car. So sit back, relax, and enjoy. So the first thing that I did when I got the car home, I tore the interior out and I just started cleaning it. Carpet was pretty nasty. It was someone had dumped differential fluid on the passenger side seat, so it stank pretty good. So I pulled it all out, pulled out all the sound system, and got to cleaning. After I'd finished vacuuming and shampooing the rugs in the interior and going through some of the electrical stuff, I realized that there were quite a bit more problems than I had thought there were with the car. So my first order of business was I changed out the air filter, I changed out the fuel filter, I changed out the spark plugs. I went through and kind of just did like a normal tune-up that you would do on a car. What's really nice about working on rotaries is just the amount of space you have in the engine bay. The engines are so small, everything sits so low, you can just get into everything. And you can see here in this video, after I had done all the tune-ups, I had changed everything, and I was still having some trouble with the engine. I couldn't get it to run, it was idling really high, it was being really weird. After spending weeks, I would say, troubleshooting the car, changing the oil, I took the Nicky carburetor off, I replaced all the gaskets, I did everything that I could to get this car to run. It just wouldn't do it, so it was time to put it up on the lift and start troubleshooting deeper into the engine. So out comes all the electronics, out comes all the interior bits, everything's coming apart. There we go. And as I was digging into this car deeper and deeper, the more issues that I found. There were cut wires, there were things that were burnt out, corroded connections, all sorts of stuff. So what I decided to do, just chop the wiring harness right out. I'm just gonna build my own. I've done it once, I'm gonna do it again because this car was very rough. So with the entire car torn down and the engine pulled out, we could tear into it and see what the problem is. I decided that I wanted to do a stop motion for this because I thought it'd be pretty cool. I've never seen a rotary engine torn down this way. I thought it'd be pretty interesting. This is probably the biggest nut I've ever seen. It's like a 42 or a 48. It's something crazy. My first inclination is something wrong is right there. If you look at that arrow, there's a bearing material coming out of that, which I thought was strange. And now that the engine was torn down, I found the issues. It was spun bearings. And so what I did is I cleaned everything really well. I pressed in new bearings. I went through and I replaced all of the corner seals, all of the corner seal springs, all of the side seal springs, and all of the apex seal springs. Everything else I reused. So we have the stationary gear that is on the front of the engine where the oil pump is. You can see, I don't know if you can see, let's see if we can get a good angle right there. See that? All that copper, this is the bearing, and it was actually welded to the E shaft right here. you can see right in here, you can see the copper, and you can actually, if I take a tool, you hear that? That is not supposed to sound like that. So this E-shaft is ruined. The rotors, all right, that should be a little bit better. So you can see this is the rear rotor. They are in what I would consider pretty good shape. I mean, the bearings are definitely spun, but those can be pressed out. So I think the rotors will be okay. There is a little bit of damage on the front rotor. Let's see, there's this little guy right here. When going through and testing the front rotor, it turned out that it was just too damaged. It was actually pinching the side seal in, and I couldn't get a clean, I couldn't get a good seal, so I just replaced the whole rotor. A little bit of damage, but it's not, doesn't hit into the side seal, so I don't think it should be an issue. I'll just make sure it's flat, and I think I should be able to reuse these again, but let me know what you think down in the comments if I could. I think I can, as far as how I understand how it seals. But then let's get to the aluminum housings. So this was the rear aluminum housing, and you can see this chrome right here. After talking with an engine builder in Hawaii, he told me that I could reuse this housing and it wouldn't be too bad of an issue, especially for the first engine build. Here, it's peeling right off. Here, and that is pretty bad. For these, I ended up reusing the side seals because when I went through and measured all of them, I actually got all of them to be within, I think it was 6 to 8 thousandths of an inch for clearance between the side seal and the corner seal for all of them. So I didn't even need to buy another side seal, which was awesome. For the oil pan, I actually went with a stud kit that converted it to, instead of bolts, to get more clamping force, and I used an LRB baffling plate, so my cornering, I won't get as much oil slosh in my cornering, and it's a really cheap and effective upgrade for your engines if you want to track them. Now, while I was rebuilding this motor over the course of a few weeks, I had started to sand down and prep the engine bay and cleaning up all of the rust in there and painting it, so you'll see that next. And what I used for the engine bay, I sanded everything down to 400 grit, I cleaned everything with degreaser and then rubbing alcohol, and then I hit it with a Rust-Oleum rusty metal primer, and then I hit it after that dried with a couple coats of Rust-Oleum enamel black paint, which is really, really good. It's chemically resistant. It's good up to like 400 degrees Fahrenheit. And after all the paint had dried, I went through and started running all my brake line systems. I'm using Nycop, 3/8 inch Nycop with a double flare end. It's so easy to work with. Bending it's like an absolute joy. You know, the stainless steel lines or the steel lines are so hard and just like it's just awful. I love Nycop. And there we go. You can see I have all of my brake lines run. You can see they kind of go through around there, down in. Looks way, way nicer than the OEM. So now what I'm getting done is cleaning off all of the gunk and everything off of the front subframe, and then I'm going to get it painted with some Rust-Oleum rusty metal primer and paint black. Okay, so now that the excuse me, now that the basically I have kind of everything where I want it, where I think it'll be, I'm gonna start running I'm gonna put my fuel tank back in. And here's what's left of the wiring harness and schematic. See if that'll. And this is what we're going to be modifying to. And there is the main harness, nice and complete. All new connections for everything, all the grounds for the harness, the main section, nice and heat shrunk sealed. And then I'll reseal more once I figure out exactly how long I need for wires and stuff. Oh yeah, looking good. And now with all of the wiring, fuel lines, and brake lines done, the engine back in, it's time to fire it up for the first time. And with the car running, it was time to start finishing up all the little details and things that needed to be finished. Like the exhaust, for example, needed to be redone. It was leaking and it was just rusted, not very good. So I figured, time to try my hand at some welding and weld up my own exhaust. So what I did is I purchased a kit off of Amazon. It's 2.5-inch mild steel exhaust pipe kit for, I think it was $95. It comes with 2 6-foot sections, 2 90 degrees, 2 45 degrees, a couple other pieces. And yeah, I mean, you can't beat that when, a racing beat exhaust is $1,000. So pulled it apart and it's pretty nice. The other thing that I also purchased was I think it's a 16-inch by 6-inch silencer or straight through. It's like the fiberglass packed resonator. And yeah, I think that was another $50. And it gives it a nice sound. So you'll get to hear what that sounds like from the old muffler to this. It sounds much, much better. And here I'm just MIG tacking my exhaust piece so everything stays where I want it, and then I can start TIG welding it. And what I'm using here is 60 amps on my welder. I think it's 25 CFM of argon gas. And I think it's a 1/16 tungsten rod, I think. And it seemed to be doing pretty good. I mean, this is the first time I ever used a TIG welder. I just watched a bunch of YouTube videos and read some stuff, and it's much nicer than my MIGs, for sure. And I gotta say, I mean, I'm no professional welder, but for my first exhaust system, I couldn't be happier. It came out exactly how I wanted it. There was no leaks. There's nothing. It was just, it fit right up. It fits good. Like, I'm actually kind of proud of myself, to be honest. Now you can see what I'm doing is changing my tunes around. I can get it to idle a little bit, but I think it's running a little bit too lean still. So I'm going to fatten everything up to be on the safe side and then kind of just start to pull fuel off where I think I can. Still kind of learning how all this works.